go for GPS incorporation? Okay, we'll load. Here we go.
Hello and welcome back to this Orbiter 2016 video series. I'm Tex and this is episode 6 of Journey to Saturn. In the previous episode we arrived here at MAV orbiting Titan about 600 kilometers above the surface. And in this episode we need to transfer our crew over to MAV and use that vehicle to enter into Titan's atmosphere and conduct man's first landing on a world beyond our own system. So this is definitely a cool episode here we have ahead of us, and I have one surprise that I'm going to share with you about halfway through the episode. So be sure you hang in there, watch the whole episode. Also go by my website, texfilms.com, check it out. I'm going to share some content there exclusively for members, so sign up for a free account. You can access the forums and all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's jump right into this episode. Alright, so we're here in Deep Star, and we are just now undocking MAV from Deep Star. I'm just starting out here with MAV already docked to Deep Star, assuming we've already transferred the crew over, really just to save a little bit of time. We saw that docking sequence in the little cinematic preview at the beginning of the video, and we actually sort of previewed MAV departing Deep Star and performing the entry burn. So what we're going to do now is actually perform that live, obviously. But yeah, you can see that MAV is undocked from Deep Star. And in the background, I pulled up the MAV documentation, which has the keys and tells you which way to orient the ship. I believe you orient MAV orbit normal for the entry burn, and you use the hover engines to actually burn for your entry into what's supposed to be Mars, but we're using it for Titan.
Translation.
So you can see as we drift away from Deep Star, we'll get a little bit further away here, and we're going to deploy the the inflatable entry shield. So looking at the map MFD, you can see there we are approaching orbital sunrise over Titan, and this is about where I want to perform the entry burn, just because I'd like to enter somewhere around orbital sunset. I should say sunset on the surface of Titan. And there we go. I've pressed D to deploy the inflatable entry shield there. But yeah, it's really for cinematic purposes, just because if you know anything about photography, really pictures at noon with bright sunlight actually don't look that great. The lower lighting around sunset, sunrise, or just before, just after, really produces better pictures, and so that's really what my goal is here. Now, we don't have a specific target to hit on the surface of Titan, this being the first manned mission landing on the surface of Titan. We don't have, obviously, any bases there, and because the surface of Titan is really lacking in orbiter, there's not going to be any real lakes or mountains to explore, so where we land on the surface really doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is just stick to our current orbit here, whatever our inclination is here with Deep Star. I'm just going to perform the entry burn and just try and land somewhere around sunset or just before, on the surface of Titan there. So you can see I'm actually performing the burn now. And I'm bringing down the periapsis basically until it hits the surface. I'm actually watching the map MFD, and there it is. So I want to bring that on the map MFD, the ground track. I want to bring that somewhere so it ends around sunset. So maybe I've burned a little bit too much there. That is actually telling us we're going to hit the ground somewhere around midday, I guess. So let's see if I can correct that, just extend it back over toward sunset a little bit. And I'm not really worried about burning up. I know Titan does have a very thick atmosphere, and you might think that you'd have to worry about burning up, but we're currently orbiting Titan, so our velocity is relatively low because Titan has low gravity, so it's not really an issue, at least not with MAV anyways, when I was experimenting to make sure that I could use this to actually enter Titan's atmosphere. So that looks fine. Looking at the map MFD, you can see that our ground track is predicting we're going to hit the ground somewhere near sunset. We'll actually see how accurate that is when we get on the ground. But yeah, so we've performed the burn, and at this time, I believe what we have to do is rotate face up until we start falling in the atmosphere, and then MAV should pretty much try to orient itself around 45 degrees with the heat shield obviously pointed in the direction that you're traveling, so that it provides heat shielding as well as a nice big surface area to slow you down. So obviously things are simplified quite a bit because we don't have a specific target to hit on the surface of Titan. But it's a unique challenge for sure, trying to enter into an atmosphere as thick as Titan's. But it is helped greatly by the fact that I believe also that Titan does have low gravity. Thinking about sort of entering Earth's atmosphere or with a planet with Earth's gravity, where you're orbiting, 7,500, 7,600 meters per second, and if it had an atmosphere as thick as, Titan does, that would certainly be a little bit more different, I suppose. But, yeah, just trying to figure out the orientation here with MAV. It's awkward, I guess, when you're used to flying winged vessels. Oh, there you can see Deep Star just ahead there a second ago. So I believe that's going to be the orientation that we're looking for. So we've got the heat shield pointed basically in the direction that we're traveling, pretty much. And so we're just going to time accelerate some here because we do have quite a long descent ahead of us. it's going to take a little bit of time to fall through this thick atmosphere. There's a nice external view. You can see Saturn falling down below the horizon there. And I'm just looking, I guess Deep Star is well out of view now. We're too far away from it. So just orient the camera sort of in the direction we're traveling there, and you can see our altitude is down to about 545 kilometers. So we've still got a ways to go. What I'm going to do is actually just cut forward in time a little bit until we start falling into, most of the thicker part of the atmosphere anyways. Because at this point there's not really anything going on. So just to keep the video sort of short, we'll just cut forward in time and just come right back here. Okay, so we're falling down into definitely some of the thicker atmosphere now. We're almost at 200 kilometers in altitude. There's 209, 208, 207. And you can actually see, looking at the map MFD over there, that our ground track has pulled back away from sunset quite a bit. And I suppose that's because as we're falling into the thicker atmosphere, we're really slowing down very rapidly now at this point. You can see how low our periapsis has dropped below the surface of Titan there. So we are definitely slowing down. And you can see we're still well above Titan's haze and cloud layer. So we've got quite a ways to go. I mean, if you think about it, when you're orbiting at 200 kilometers above the Earth, you're in space. I mean, you're well above the atmosphere pretty much. So the fact that we're actually in an atmosphere at this altitude is pretty incredible. But I do have a bit of a surprise that I haven't talked about yet. I was going to wait until we get a little lower into the atmosphere. But you might notice in just a bit, when we break through the haze layer as humans gaze upon Titan's surface for the first time in history, that the surface of Titan here in the video on my orbiter 2016 version here actually has textures. So I have to give a huge thank you to Martin. He really pulled some strings for me to make this happen. But basically, in the same method that he had to create the .tree files for Mars and Earth and all that, apparently it really requires a lot of resources, and I don't know the exact way that it's done. The way he explained it sounded very complicated to me, but basically he has to I think use some computers, some computer time from someone else, and I don't want to mislead you guys on how exactly he does that, but let's just leave it at it's very complicated, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources to map the surface of bodies and create these .tree files that Orbiter 2016 uses. And the reason that I needed him to do that was because I wanted to use the surface microtextures that are available for the Moon and Mars, and I think some other small bodies. But I wanted to obviously use that so that the surface on Titan looked decent. And although we're not going to have any like mountains or anything special like that, we will have some surface textures besides just a totally bland, plain white surface that it was before. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. It was the best solution that I could really come up with, because I'm not a developer, or I'm not one who can actually create textures and make add-ons for Orbiter. Maybe one day that would happen, but at this point I really don't have an interest in doing that. So anyway, so that is a definite surprise that I wanted to share with you, and we are below 100 kilometers in altitude now, so it shouldn't be too much longer actually before we start to get our first glimpse of the surface here. Check out our ground speed is about 122 meters per second, so we're going pretty slow at this point, and we really never had any plasma or anything like that on the vehicle. No heat generation really that was of any significance anyways. Okay, so we're almost below 90 kilometers in altitude, and you might notice that MAV is actually sort of bobbing around a bit here. I think this was pretty much developed with, Mars in mind. So this being the Mars ascent vehicle, I don't think it was really intended to come into an atmosphere as thick as Titan here. So that, I suspect, has something to do with this. I'm just trying to use a little bit of kill rotation here to sort of stabilize it a little bit. It doesn't seem like it gets too far out of hand. We are at 10 times acceleration, bearing that in mind, so it looks probably worse than it really is. I think it's not moving quite as fast in real time, but nonetheless, I think our crew would much appreciate it if we could avoid some of this seasickness going on here. Yeah, it's moving around quite a bit. Anyways, yeah, it's not too big of a deal. Oh, and there we go. Look at that. We have the surface of Titan in sight. We've just broken through the hazy cloud layer, and look at that. That is too cool. I don't see any liquid lakes of methane, but of course, this is orbiter. It looks like there's some type of a surface feature over there. I didn't think there would actually be any mountains in orbiter, but that's interesting. That's now it makes me wish I'd landed over there. I don't know if that would actually be anything that looks cool, but yeah, there you go. We're at 60 kilometers, so I guess we broke through the haze layer somewhere just above 60 kilometers in altitude. Wow, our ground speed is only 45 meters per second, so we're just slowly coming down here. It takes quite a bit of time to perform this entry here. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm huge thanks to Martin, because without that tree file, the surface microtexture add-on would not work. It was dependent on having a tree file. And I don't know, I thought it would be just as simple as, copying a tree file from Mars or something, but it's way different than anything I realized. So yeah, without that tree file, this would not have worked. And you can already see, I mean, the surface has some textures to it, and as we get lower, it's going to look much better. Basically, what I used is the Mars surface micro textures. So it pretty much looks about what we might expect the color or the shade of Titan surface to look like, a orange reddish color anyways. So that looks very cool. Just trying to get the camera situated here. I've got kill rotation on, just trying to stabilize MAV a little bit here. Now the shielding here automatically ejects, I think, around 3,500 meters above the surface, but I'm probably going to go ahead and dump it early, just because Titan's atmosphere is so thick here that I don't really anticipate, and its gravity also being so low, I don't really anticipate that we will have too much problem with vertical speed, even with the big dish gone that's creating, a nice big surface area to slow us down. Our vertical speed is basically what our ground speed is right now. It's pretty much pretty close. I mean, most of our velocity right now is taking us straight down. Yeah, and see, I mean, I don't know if that big dish there, that heat shield, is causing some of this, or just Titan's atmosphere causes some of this. But I mean, as we're descending down into the atmosphere, you can hear thunder clapping in the distance, which sounds really, really cool to hear. It sounds eerie and ominous. Probably the feeling that you might have descending into a world as unique and bizarre as Titan is, with its methane lakes and methane in the atmosphere and all kinds of just really, really interesting stuff going on in this little moon. So I don't know if that's actually more surface features over there or if that's just sort of clipping with the atmosphere, just a kind of a graphical glitch. I really don't know. But so anyway, I've gone ahead and manually ejected the entry shield there. And so now we are falling with just the lander. And you can see instantly that our vertical speed and, of course, our velocity has increased. So about 50 meters per second, but that's fine. I mean, it's actually falling now. And we're sort of getting upside down here. I'm just going to speed time up and try and accelerate this descent as quickly as I can, but try and keep it somewhat realistic, if you will. Again, ideally this lander was not intended to land on Titan, so it's not ideal as far as realism goes, but boy, I can imagine that our poor crew members in there are getting quite seasick at the moment. Man, we are at 10 times acceleration again, but nevertheless, it sure is moving around a lot. So yeah, we're actually falling faster than the heat shield, so boy, I hope we don't hit it as we come down. You know, I didn't actually consider the possibility of that. Okay. I think we're going to have to try and stabilize Mav here, and maybe I can use the level autopilot. So basically hold it level with the horizon. Let me just manually... Oh, there goes the heat shield. So I guess we're falling below it now. So now I guess we're okay. We're not going to hit it coming down, but hopefully it doesn't fall on us after we land. That would be... what are the odds of that? And that would be terrible. So we're level with the horizon. Let's hit kill rotation. Okay, so now our crew should be much happier. And we are almost at 6 kilometers above the surface. I'm just time accelerating here. And the autopilots are having a little bit of trouble at 10 times acceleration, but I suppose that's to be expected. And there goes the landing gear. It's automatically deployed as we are almost down to 2 kilometers above the surface. So our vertical speed is right about just over 30 meters per second negative, and it's actually as I increase the hover engines, I'm actually engaging the hover engines for the first time just to test and see how quickly I can lower that vertical speed, and it comes down quickly, so there's really no issue with that. So I guess it wasn't too big of a deal to go ahead and separate from the heat shield when I did. But if you're doing this on your own, I believe it will just separate on its own as you approach the surface. So then that looks great, you know, just having those surface textures. When I first tested this using MAV to enter into Titan's atmosphere, you know, Titan just had a plain white surface, and it was very far from spectacular. So it was more going to be just to say we did it kind of thing. But now we can actually not only say we did it, but you can actually feel good about we're looking at the surface of Titan. I mean, how cool is that? That's just so cool. All right, we're almost on the ground, and I expect that the altitude tape on the surface MFD is actually going to go negative before we actually make contact with the surface of Titan. Martin talked about that in my live stream on the chat. I forgot what he said causes it, but anyways, we're just going to thankfully we have these visuals here with the surface textures, so we can tell that we're not actually fixing to hit the ground. According to the surface MFD, we are fixing to hit the ground. And actually, increased my hover engines a little too much there. But yeah, you can see that we're still quite a ways above the ground here. So let's let that vertical speed come back down so we can continue descending. And then I'm also going to try and not only hold MAV level here with the horizon, but also want to try and use my linear RCS and stop what little bit of, I guess, forward velocity that we have, so we're not sort of drifting so much as we come down and make contact. Okay, so if we look down, that looks great. We're still a little ways above the surface. Our vertical speed is very manageable. In fact, at this vertical speed, it's going to take us quite a bit of time to get down on the ground here. Okay, the ground's getting awfully big. I've increased our vertical speed just a little bit, just trying to accelerate things a little bit faster. It's kind of cool. The rocks there on the surface look, you know, kind of similar to what Huygens saw. So perhaps this is the same spot that Huygens landed at. Maybe we can find that little guy and take some pictures, some selfies. All right, almost there. Oh no, you know, I didn't mean to do that, but I do that sometimes. I put a little too much juice into the hover engines and sort of caused us to bounce up just a bit, but that's okay. We're coming down. Let's see if we can set it down nice and soft here. As we're getting close to the ground, it's getting a little difficult to stop the drift, but you can see we're almost on the ground here. So it is a little hard. Oh, we bounced. Hold on. And we're on the ground. All right. Yeah, so obviously it's a little difficult when the altitude tape there on the surface MFD says we're under the ground. And I guess graphically it looks like we're actually hovering just above the surface, but we are on the surface and we appear to be sliding a bit on the surface. Let me see, if I speed time up, will it stop? Let me use linear RCS, try and stop it from sliding here. No. Okay, so let's just pop open the scenario editor very quickly and force it to sit down here. We'll just go to edit, location, and hit apply. There we go. Yep, ground speed's on 0. All right, so there we go. We're safely on the surface of Titan, guys. And graphically, it's not perfect, I know, but honestly, this is like a million times better than what it was before. Again, if you try and do this yourself without the tree files and the surface microtextures, you'll see what I'm talking about. It looks terrible. So I forgot to message Martin about sharing these tree files. I will do that as soon as I get done recording this video. So hopefully I can include a link for you guys in the description below where you can go to Orbiter's website and download the tree files for Titan. And then, of course, you can download the add-on for the surface microtextures. And I guess I'll include some type of instructions how to do that. Maybe I'll make a post on the forum. All right, guys, we have reached the end of the episode. Be sure and leave a like if you liked the video, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe for updates to the channel, and also check out my website, texfilms.com. I do have a forum and community there, and I'm sharing some content exclusively with members. It's totally free, so just go by there. You can register an account, and yeah. As always, guys, thank you for watching the series. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys are all doing really well. Until the next episode, take care, and we'll see you then.